Hello, we are Total Party Overkill, and what is the rule of cool anyway? Hello, I am Spencer, and I'm joined by my cousin Tanner. And today we're going to be talking about the rule of cool, which I can speak for myself here. I want to speak for Tanner, but is my favorite. I feel like what makes D&D D&D really, and not just any other game. You know, how do you feel
Yeah,
about it, Tanner?
I think I would agree in that it makes some games, most games, when you use it, a lot more fun than they could be. You know, it adds a lot of fun for everybody. Um,
Yeah,
but for those of you who aren't familiar with the rule of cool, um, what's a quick definition? How would you describe the rule of cool, Spencer?
yeah. The rule of cool is essentially the rule that a dungeon master can essentially bend the rules or essentially throw the rules out the window for the sake of making an awesome scene in a role-playing game. Um, and I can hear you guys saying, well, that rule is kind of just saying that you can contradict the rules of the game, and that doesn't quite make sense to some people. But this is in the player's handbook. Um, it
Ooh,
it
it is?
it really, it's not called the rule of cool, but essentially you are told to throw any rules out the window
Okay.
if you don't want to use them. Like this, like D&D specifically tells you to not obey the rules if it just isn't fun for you. That
Wow, I think I vaguely remember like when I read through the player's handbook for the first time reading that, but I totally forgot about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. So it's pretty cool. Um and essentially I think the rule of cool just allows for like so many cool moments.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of want to like kick us off with like maybe just a time where you've used the rule of cool and kind of like seen something happen, something real cool.
Yeah, dude. So the biggest like moments or times where the rule of cool has happened tend to be either in combat or when someone has like usually like a class specific ability um and they do something, they roll like a nat 20 or something, right?
Yeah.
So in combat that would look like, okay, there's this big orc, right? He's about to kill someone and you run up, you roll with this big old you the barbarian runs up with a great axe, you roll a d20, you get a 20. Maybe you do like uh almost the orc's full health. Like say it's there's one hit point left after you've dealt all the damage. I'll say, you know what? Screw it. You freaking kill the orc. How do you want the orc to die? And I'll let my players describe how the orc dies. Maybe it'll be like, oh, I cut the orc's head off, and the head rolls and hits the the table or something like that. And I use it as like a way for my players to get really excited about the game and what they're doing. Um, yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's sweet. For me, I can think of like essentially like, for example, I have a character in the campaign that I last played that was
Mhm.
one of my players was a monk. And monks
Okay.
can run on walls. And they were fighting this green dragon in like this underground like fighting ring. Um and it came time for them to essentially like fight this green dragon, and my monk was like, okay, my teammates are down, my back's kind of against the wall, what do I do, you know? And he's like, I run up the dragon. And I was kind of like, well, you know, like that's not technically in the rules, you know, like nowhere does it say you can run up a dragon.
Yeah,
But
is
I
a
was
dragon
like,
a wall?
no, a dragon's not a wall, a dragon's a dragon.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I was kind of just like, yeah, you can run up a dragon. Like, it's like chained to the ground, and I'm like, with enough focus, you know, I feel like you could do it, you know. And I also just feel like the visual of this monk like running across the whole dragon to go like just start like punching it, you know, was just really cool. And the instant I was like, yeah, man, you run up the dragon, everyone at the table was just like, yeah, whoa, run up a dragon, you know. And it was just like an awesome story that kind of is really fun to tell to this day.
Yeah, that's thinking back, like most of the times that my players, like the moments that they remember in the sessions that I've dungeon mastered for them are often the moments where I slightly bend the rules a little bit just to make the moment more cool and more like awesome, so everyone gets more excited about it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Do you have any kind of just like off the bat, any other stories about kind of the rule of cool and like how you've used it before?
Um, so
Or not really, yeah.
I do have one. I think okay. So for me, the rule of cool isn't it most of the time it's slightly bending the rules, right?
Yeah.
Some of the time it's just like almost just giving in and then letting my players do whatever they want, even if like the world wouldn't allow it. So for example, um this is actually a game I DM'd for you.
Okay.
We were playing Waterdeep. What was it? Dragon Heist.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it was you, uh your brother, and I think someone else,
And
maybe
my friend came,
little
yeah.
Flash Star, yeah.
Yeah.
And for some reason you guys went to this inn, and it was this inn, it was like all of these people were ruffians, right? They were like, this was the bad part of Waterdeep. Everyone was like ready to just pull a knife on anyone at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother was playing, I believe, a bard, and
Yeah, I think you're
he,
right.
yeah, he um had a bunch of really cool moments with the innkeeper and stuff, and some other people in the tavern. And even though the pre-made module was kind of like, yeah, these people are kind of ruffians, I would have assumed they wouldn't be very friendly. He went up and like played his instrument for them, and he did so well, and he had a great relationship with the innkeeper. He basically became like the hero of the inn
Mm-hmm.
in that that time, and it was something I just kind of like let happen, even though, you know, maybe wasn't supposed to.
And
That's another one I can think of.
I feel like what you're talking about, it is like a rule of cool, but it's a rule of cool in the way that you don't really hear people talk about. When you hear people talk about the rule of cool, it's stereotypically like the player's handbook, like the written rules of the game. But
This
I feel
was
like
I didn't
like,
bend any rules. This was the player just doing something cool, and I let it happen. And I kind of like made it more extravagant in that way.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying is once again, like the rule of cool is like more so focused on like the player's handbook. And I feel like you've kind of done something pretty cool in saying that, like almost bringing the rule of cool into, I would say, kind of like a different definition that you don't really hear it used in, with being like with role playing, that you don't have to be tied into any one specific thing, and that like you can enter any campaign with a pre-made idea of how everything's going to go down, but at any point you can be like, no, it is going to be more cool for this to happen, and then
Exactly.
insert said cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, dude.
I just feel like that was pretty cool. I feel like that was pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man.
I do know there have been, I don't think I can think of any off the top of my head, but there have been a few moments where I've gotten a little in trouble with the rule of
Ooh,
cool, where I kind of
controversy.
uh did something, broke the rules a little too much, and made the game a little too easy for my players or something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any moments like that where you went a little too far with the rule of cool?
Yes, I do. Um,
Right.
we're most people are familiar with the idea of natural 20s and natural ones. Um,
Oh yeah.
and on a natural 20, that's what we call a critical success, you know? It just sounds great. You know, it sounds so cool and amazing, and everyone gets so excited to roll a natural 20. That's one of the best parts of the game, you know? And this was early in my dungeon mastering days where I had this village, you know? And the whole concept of the village was that that their whole village was destroyed by a meteor. And now they worship that rock that just like lays in the middle of this pit now. They've rebuilt, but they think of it as like a blessing, that this rock is just the greatest thing in the world, you know? And
Yeah.
there were these small green gems that my players had that when you crushed them exploded. Um and they eventually walked in there and they were like, all of the shops pretty much only sold rocks, and they were like, this place sucks. And they tried to convince uh the people of the village that the rock was like the new thing, that they're like, this is your god coming back to you in the form of this green rock, you know?
Hmm.
And I was like, this isn't gonna happen. And I was like, I'm gonna let them roll a die, you know, but I was like, they're not gonna convince these people. And it was a natural 20. And
Yeah.
I felt the need so badly to be like, well, it was a critical success, so I have to make it cool, you know?
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah. And the leader of the village comes to you and he's like, yes. And he grabs the green rock and he like runs it over to the big meteor and he like smashes it against the meteor. And like immediately the leader of the village was like vaporized because the
Oh my
rock
god.
explodes when, and like that kind of like, it derailed that whole section of the campaign. And part of it, what, like, I don't want to blame it all on the rule of cool. That wasn't the best decision making on my end, just at all. um but yeah, I got in a little bit of trouble, you know, just with trying to like make things cool, and I let them
Man.
roll for it, and
And
I
it
don't know.
and I'm sure it was super funny and cool, but obviously it derailed a major part of the campaign, you know?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. There's one moment I know that it was another critical success moment. Where someone had rolled a D20 and then something OP happened actually that made my players, made the campaign a lot easier on my players when I shouldn't have. So basically, my players were in this city, right? And they needed to go to this kingdom that was really far away. And they had basically two options, right? They could go by boat or they could go by land.
Okay.
That was it. There was little side quests that I had at this town. That there was this temple in the forest nearby. Um, it was like the temple of this goddess or something, and there was this green dragon that was protecting the temple,
Okay.
right? Um, so they go to this temple. They're going to like retrieve an artifact or something, and they were supposed to like get into a fight with this dragon. It was like this dragon was protecting this artifact. They decided instead of when before the combat, I let them kind of talk to the dragon a little bit. The dragon's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Blah blah blah. I let them roll persuasion to see if the dragon would give them a ride
Oh.
to the place. They were like,
Oh.
"Yo, the dragon could just fly us there," and then they just like kept talking to this dragon. And yeah, they got a nat 20, and I felt obligated. I was like, I guess I've got to let him do it.
Yeah. And I feel like
So
both of us are kind of like getting into a territory where we're like, this is the rule of cool, and I'm gonna explain why. I feel like right now, I feel like I should preface this, just because a natural 20 doesn't mean that you automatically
exactly.
succeed.
No.
And we as dungeon masters failed to kind of realize that, and we were just like, all right, because it's cool for them, like we have to let it happen. And so we kind of use the rule of cool in an uncool way.
Exactly. And I want to just clarify, I messed up with the rule of cool in this way more earlier in my DMing. I feel like I've started to get better. I've started to like not just be like, okay, nat 20 automatically means success. Like that doesn't mean success. You can't just like say, oh hey, I want to try to like freaking jump this 50-foot building, and if you get a nat 20, you do it. Like no, like it has to be within what is actually possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, dude, rule of cool. It to me, and I said this early in here, is kind of what separates D&D from other games, because I feel like for other games the rules are entirely what make it, you know? I was like, if you're playing basketball and everyone's just like, it'd be, yeah, let's just like not pay attention to like the players punching each other, you know?
Like, that'd be
it'd be a
awesome.
lot less fun for the players involved. I mean, actually, some people might like it, but like it wouldn't be basketball. But for me, D&D is kind of made up of that, where like, since it's a storytelling game, the fact that sometimes when done correctly, going off script from like the written rules can be really powerful and a really great storytelling tool.
Yeah.
And dude, it just all comes together magically, dude.
I totally agree, man. And like we've said before, the point of the rule of cool is to make something awesome, make something fun for your players.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've had problems with it, it's when it's taken away from the game.
Yes.
When like maybe my players had some momentary fun and like they thought it was really cool, but it took away something I wanted my players to experience, that long journey of heading to this place where they could have had some really cool encounters and stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, they just flew on the dragon, basically a straight shot, maybe a couple days, and they got straight to where they wanted to be, and it wasn't as cool as it could have been.
Yeah. And I feel like when you're going to bend the rules, always do it in favor of your players. Never do it against them. If you're going to bend rules, make sure you're not bending rules for the big bad enemy guy, you know? Like, don't break the rules for your own little like sadistic DM pleasures, you know?
I agree with that statement, but I also disagree.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. So I think if your players are because this is something that happened to me, right? It was the big bad. I had this cool encounter planned, I created this big bad like myself. It was a homebrew right when
Mm-hmm.
in my homebrew days before I started getting into all of these pre-made modules and stuff. Um, I accidentally made the big bad way too underpowered.
Yeah, I feel like that's separate. What I'm saying is like what you
Okay,
said
yeah,
about 1 hit point. Don't let the enemy behead your, players when they have 1 hit point.
yeah. Oh, but what? Like, okay, I wanted this final battle with the big bad, to be devastating.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Do it within the rules. Beat your players fair and square. So like the example you
No.
gave earlier, where like, your enemies were like they hit them for a lot, but they still had 1 hit point left.
Uh huh.
Don't break the rule to like then be like, that wasn't quite enough damage. Now I'm gonna kill you. Just because like although like death is a part of the game, like I don't know if any player like really is like, man, if I could die right now, God,
Yeah,
that'd
yeah,
be
yeah.
my treat.
I maybe not to kill a player, but sometimes I will break a rule that I've set
Mm-hmm.
to make it harder for the players. That's what I'm trying to say. Is
Okay.
like I will make it harder for my players if I want them to feel like hopeless in a certain part of a campaign.
Yeah.
If I want them to feel like so weak and like they are going to die, I will like in a moment of triumph for them, I will slightly bend the rules in the opposite way, almost as an anti-rule of cool, to make them feel hopeless. If
Dude.
that's what I'm trying to go for in that moment in the campaign.
Yeah. I see it. I feel like this is just where our styles of dungeon mastering are kind of juxtaposed.
Yeah.
Which is a reoccurring theme. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. For me, that's where I get in trouble with DMing is when I have a preset idea of how I want my players to feel.
Mhm.
And I feel like, dude, if it's working for you, man, fucking by all means, keep it going.
Mhm.
But where I've gotten in trouble is I go into a session and I'm like, I know what's gonna happen. Like I know what my players
Yeah.
are gonna feel. And then when they don't feel that way or they don't want to feel that way,
Mhm.
oh, it goes off the rails for me.
You may have a point. You may have a point. Um I feel like it's not very often that I want to force a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'll clarify, it's not very often, but when I do, I sometimes will force it.
Yeah. Once again, I feel like as long as your players are chilling with it, dude, and that's like just a vibe
Yeah.
for everyone. I mean, it's all cool.
But you know what? We've kind of talked about this a little bit before
Mm-hmm.
together, you know. Last time we kind of talked about this, I had we talked about like our different DMing styles where I would kind of like sometimes tip the rules a little too much. I had a session right after
Okay.
that time we talked about it, and I looked back at like some of the moments where like I cheesed my players a little too much and I shouldn't have, and I really felt bad.
Really?
And yeah, um, so like I have done those moments where I would just totally bend the rules, like not just slightly bend them, just bend them in half, 90-degree angle. Um, just to do something I want to happen, and I started playing with them and I was like, looking back, it feels so wrong now that I have done those types of things.
Yeah. Dang, dude.
So I think from the last time we talked about this, you have started to maybe change my perception.
Dang, dude. I feel like once again, for anyone listening and kind of like keeping up with this, we aren't claiming to be like Matthew Mercer or anything.
No
Um,
way. No way.
cuz once again like I feel like the best way to get into dungeon mastering is to fumble your way through it, man.
Yes.
I feel like the more you just constantly fail, the better you are going to be as a dungeon master. Because once again, with a game where you can't really plan for like anything going the right way, yeah, some stuff's gonna go down that you didn't mean to go down, and you might walk away from a session being like, oh, I could have done something differently, you know? And I feel like that's just gonna help you fall into your own dungeon mastering voice, which I feel like is pretty important.
That reminds me of some of the stuff I used to do as a dungeon master in my early years.
Uh-huh.
Like I started with literally, I played in a session as a character one time, and then I didn't have anyone else to play with, and I wanted to play so bad. I didn't have a player's handbook. I don't think I even had any dice. Maybe I had like a D20.
Yeah.
And I would just run sessions almost with my own rules, but partially like I'd look stuff up. And then what little information I could remember and get, I would just run with those kind of rules.
Yeah. We fell into dungeon mastering the same way, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And that's what, like, that's why, once again, going back to Rule of Cool, it's such a valuable tool. So valuable.
It's like you use Rule of Cool from day one dungeon master.
Yes. And it's almost how, like, when you're a new dungeon master, the Rule of Cool helps you get through the game because it helps you realize that, oh, I don't have to know everything as long as me and my players agree that, like, as long as we're doing what's, like, in the best interest for the game and the story, then, like, we can kind of play this game pretty loose and all have tons of fun. That being said, though, when you use the Rule of Cool, don't be careful, because you might set an expectation. Because once again, what I set when I let my players have the natural 20 was that a natural 20 will always succeed. And I know that some dungeon masters will be like, well, if a natural 20 won't succeed, then why let them roll? And for me, it's kind of like, because it could have gone worse. You know, if my players are like, hey, I'm going to jump off this building and, like, try to land on my feet, you know, and it's like 100 stories, you know, or something, like, impossible for their character to do, I'll make them roll to see how bad it will be. And if they rolled a natural 20, dude, that's the least worst option for me. But the example I set with that I set there was that a natural 20 will always be great, and, you know, that they can always do it. And that was my bad as dungeon master. And the same thing, that even though I handle it well with letting my monk walk up a dragon, I set the example that as a monk, he can walk up enemies. And I have to now allow that. Like, once you use the Rule of Cool, you know, you have almost introduced a whole new rule to the game.
Yeah.
Because now your players know that they can do that. And it might get a little bit sour when, like, the next time they try to do it, you're like, no. You know? So once again, it's super powerful, but you got to make sure you're, like, consistent with it.
Totally.
Because, yeah, once again, like, your style's going to change, and at that point, you might just get caught.
Yes, and so, sir. And you'll just give your players a misunderstanding of how it works.
Yeah. And so I feel like it's once again very important to set your boundaries for what you feel like as a dungeon master should be allowed, and sticking with it. Because I feel like if you start, like, letting, like, your players, like, walk over you, then you're gonna get caught into a zone like me and Tanner both were, where we were just like, oh, we have to do it because they'll think it's cool. Like, we have to allow it.
And I feel like like you may have started doing this, or you may start doing this, and your players may be expecting, okay, yeah, nat 20 is something amazing, nat 1 is always something terrible. um as long as you just, you may have said this already, Spencer, as long as you are able to like communicate with your players, like, oh hey, I'm actually doing something a little different, this isn't what it is anymore.
Yeah.
As long as you set their expectations, um, and they're cool players that aren't, super toxic or whatever,
Yeah.
then it'll be fine. You're good. Just communicate.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important thing to do just with your players in general. And I feel like we will go further into this maybe in like a different episode. But once again, yeah, just to
Yeah.
like set expectations and be like, this especially helps with like players like rules lawyers who like really love to go like word for word by the rules, and just being like, hey guys, I I sometimes don't follow the rules to the T, and
Mhm.
that's just how we're going to be playing this game, and then at least all of your players know what to expect from you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only been one moment, one player that it was literally talking about the rule of cool where natural 20, um they expected something amazing to happen, and we had an argument about it.
Mm,
Uh there was only one moment, and I was just trying to explain to them like, yeah, it doesn't, um and in all honesty, that person, um I've pretty much blacklisted in a way from playing with, just because like that type of, if they're not cool with you explaining a type of rule like that, like as a dungeon master, then they're probably not the right player for you.
yeah. It doesn't mean they're not right for D&D. It just might just
Yeah,
mean they're not right for your specific games.
exactly.
And I already know, I can just feel it, that some people watching are going to have some very heavy opinions on our natural 20 take, because we posted a meme about this on our Total Party Overkill page before it was named Total Party Overkill,
Oh
about
yeah,
how natural 20s don't mean automatic success. Do you remember how this went?
I remember there being controversy. That is all I remember.
There was so much controversy. Like, I remember this was when like our photos on Total Party Overkill were only maybe getting like 200-ish likes, and
Uh-huh.
this one
And they still
spiked
get that
up to
sometimes.
several thousand.
Oh hell.
And the comments were just like, why let them roll and stuff. And I just remember, I once again, I'm not a dude, I shouldn't be on social media. I just felt the need to defend myself. Um
Mhm.
as I feel the need to defend myself too. That's such a take that will I will die on that hill, that a
I
natural
can
20
just
doesn't mean you succeed. And I'm already
I
getting
can
passionate about it. I'm gonna shut
I
up
can
now.
see you. I can see you, like that episode from The Office where, I don't know if you guys have actually seen The Office or whatever, but there's this episode in The Office where this character um had this video of him online, and he was like playing some music, and there was this one person in the comments that was like talking trash to him.
Yeah.
And this character was like, every time the guy would comment again, talking trash to him, he'd start yelling, "Ah!" Um, all angry and stuff. I can just imagine Spencer just on his phone typing like all pissed off and just be like, "No, this is what it is. This is what I mean."
Yeah. Yeah, I felt such a need to defend myself, dude. I feel, dude, I hope you know now we have to do a whole episode dedicated to natural 20s not being
Oh yeah,
freaking, yeah, success. I'm more so joking, but I would do it.
yeah,
I would do it
yeah.
just to get my point across, to make sure everyone knows, because I feel so passionately about it.
You
So
should you should
passionately about it.
you should write a book, Spencer.
I'm
You should write a
going
book.
to, man. I'm gonna write it, and I'm gonna go read it out loud at a bunch of like libraries to children, to make sure that
The
that they
children.
that they that they know that they're raised right. You know?
Just walk into a bunch of game stores with your book and just start just like preaching it like it's a holy text.
Because then at least children know that no matter how hard you try, it doesn't mean you'll succeed.
Oh no!
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's not what you want to tell children?
All right. Well, with that, I feel like we've pretty much covered all the bases onto how we feel about the rule of cool. You know, do you have any closing statements?
No. I think I'm all good there.
All right. Well, with that, we'll see you all next time.